Alright guys, so today we are going to be talking about the Hasbro Marvel Legends retro carded Rhino figure, which I finally got in on my pre-order from GameStop. Went to order this thing, I don't know, 2-3 months ago. I don't even remember when I pre-ordered it, but at the time GameStop were the only ones that were, putting this up as available for pre-order. Everybody else just said sold out of pre-orders, so I got it from them. And finally it showed up. It finally showed up this week. So now I get to finally add it to my collection. But first, we're going to talk about it a little bit. So let's look at the package here real quick. Look, it's standard retro carded stuff. You've seen it before. It's great though. I love this stuff. I mean, I was a big fan of the Spider-Man animated series back in the 90s. I didn't really get into the toys, but I loved the way they looked on the shelf. I mean, I liked the way when you walked into, at the time, like a Toys R Us or a Children's Palace or whatever it was back in the day, that you could walk in, and I just loved the cards. The cards looked awesome. So I really do dig the retro card stuff. I think it looks cool. I don't have a lot of them that I don't take out of the package. I've got a couple just because I like those particular figures. This is certainly one that I'm going to take out of the package because I want to put it on my shelf. But the card looks great. I love the old school look. I love the picture of Rhino there on the side. Looks fantastic. And then, of course, if we turn it around here, we still get that great old school look that just screams nostalgia. Again, I didn't really get into these. I was a little bit older at the time. By the time these came out, I was 18 years old, give or take. Wasn't really into the toy thing that much as a collector anymore, but still appreciated the way these cards looked. So let's go ahead and crack this guy open and see what we've got. Alright, so here we have him out of the package, and before anybody says anything, yes, I've heard all the complaints. I've watched plenty of YouTube reviewers talk about the things they don't like about this figure. Oh, it's the wrong color scheme for a comic book representation. Oh, it looks like it's from the animated series. Oh, it needs a paint wash. Oh, the Build-A-Figure was better. And yeah, no, those are all correct. Yes, I agree with all of those things. Yes, it is more animated style and the coloring is off. Yes, it could definitely use a wash. And yes, quite honestly, the Build-A-Figure was better. Not just in color and wash, but also just in general, it was just a better figure. It looked better. I liked the mask from the Build-A-Figure. I liked the shoulders from the Build-A-Figure. Yeah, I think it was a better figure. And yeah, I used to have it. I traded it off a while back, and I do kind of regret it now. But this is still a really good figure, okay? Yes, if we're going to compare it to the Build-A-Figure, which is a better figure, yeah, you can knock this thing all day long. But just as a figure itself, as a big, deluxe Marvel Legends, this thing is still great. Yeah. Could it have been better? Absolutely. Is the Build-A-Figure better? We already covered that. But this thing is still really, really cool. Now, before we go too much further, let's look at the accessories this thing came with. Not a lot, but always appreciated. First off, we've got a couple sets of these kind of open claw hands. Very nice. I won't use them because I kind of want my Rhino to have the fisted hands. Just think it makes more sense. And then, of course, we've got this alternative head here with kind of this neutral look on his face. Honestly, I don't know why we got this. If they wanted an alternative head, give us the one from the Build-A-Figure, but just in this coloring. That would have been better, but, whatever. I don't want a neutral look on my Rhino's face. I want this on my Rhino's face. I want him looking mean and mad, like he's going after Spider-Man, or just slamming his way through a building, or flipping a car, or whatever Rhino's out there doing. I want him looking angry. So I'm definitely going to be leaving this head on when I display this. So, not really going to get into too many details as far as the articulation goes, because if you've ever, handled the Build-A-Figure, this is exactly the same when it comes to articulation. This is a big, bulky figure. It's got single-jointed knees. It's got single-jointed elbows. So obviously, articulation is going to be restricted compared to most modern figures. And yes, this is based off the Build-A-Figure, which is an older figure with older articulation. So yeah, it's got limitations. You know, yeah, the head doesn't really do much. You know, yeah, the arms, yeah, they only go to that, right? The legs, they only do that. I get it. Yes, older. Yes, ball joint hips. People hate those. I get it. But you know what? Still a really good Rhino figure. And I will say, by the way, that when it comes to bigger, bulkier figures like this, because I own, you know, quite a few, you know, Marvel Select figures, and on these bigger, bulkier figures, I will say I do actually think that the ball joint hips actually work better, because a lot of times with standard hips, you don't get quite the articulation you would want, but with ball joint hips, that even though they're a little ugly, they have really good range. Even with a big bulky figure like this, you get some decent range out of those hips, which of course is nice. So yeah, look, I hear all the complaints, guys. I get it. It could always be better. Yeah, I understand. But in general, I still think this is a really cool figure that I am really, really happy to have in my collection. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and do some comparisons. Then we'll talk price, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, so first comparison is going to be the obvious one, and that of course is Juggernaut. This is the Build-A-Figure Juggernaut, and one of my favorite Marvel Legends. And again, they basically have the exact same articulation, and I think it works well for both of them. And I think they stack up really, really well together. Rhino, yeah, I kind of want him to be big and bulky and everything else, but in my mind, Juggernaut should be just a little bit bigger and a little bit bulkier. That's what we have here. I think it's perfect. Alright, so now we have him compared to my custom monster Sabretooth, which I threw together from a Sasquatch Build-A-Figure. I think these two look really, really great standing next to each other. Good size on both of them, very comparable, and Rhino looks great right alongside this guy. Alright, now to throw him up against Hulk. This is my MCU Hulk from the Hulk and Hulk Buster Iron Man 2-pack. And yeah, these two look really, really good together. And here we have him compared to Crimson Dynamo, and I think these two just stack up really nice together. And then of course we've got to stack him up against the newer Build-A-Figure Ursa Major, and again, these two work really, really well next to each other. Now of course this is Rhino, so we have to throw him up against Spider-Man, so why not three Spider-Man? So we've got the retro-carded black suit Spider-Man, we've got Cyborg Spider-Man, and of course we've got Pizza Spidey. I think he looks great with all three of them. Definitely big, intimidating, but certainly I think Peter Parker can handle it. Alright, to finish this off, we're going to let him sit amongst his friends and fellow villains of Spider-Man, and we're going to talk about the price on this guy. Now, you can pick this guy up probably somewhere between $40 and $50, give or take, depending on where you find it. If you have to go to eBay, you're probably going to be looking at closer to $50. If you can find him at retail, he retails for about $38, $39. Then, of course, you're going to pay shipping on top of that. Is it worth it? I think so, absolutely, hands down, especially when you think about the fact that the Build-A-Figure, while, again, we addressed, is better, costs roughly double that, starting at about 80 bucks just to pick that guy up complete. And you know, I mean, is it worth it to you to spend that much more money to get the slightly better figure? Maybe it is, and if it is, that's the one you should go for. But in general, if you just want a really, really good Rhino figure for your collection, hands down, I think this is the best choice available right now. It looks great, it scales great, it's got everything you want in a Rhino figure. What more could you ask for?